everybody. This is Christopher Massimo again with Massimo Motivation. I want to talk to you today about the truth behind grieving. So most of you have probably heard of the 5 stages of grief: acceptance, anger, so on and so forth. Well, unfortunately, that idea has kind of permeated itself throughout the world in a way that it probably shouldn't. So among the many reasons why it shouldn't, if you actually do a little background history on the 5 stages of grief, it was created for oncology patients that were dying. It actually wasn't created initially for a person who was grieving the loss of a loved one or some other form of grief. Another problem with the 5 stages is that there's this assumption that if you miss a stage or you don't feel a stage, for example, if I don't feel angry, I feel sad that my loved one died, I have yet to feel anger. There's this sort of self-punishment that takes place where I feel like I'm not grieving the way I'm supposed to. And because I'm not going through these stages and grieving the way that I'm supposed to, I'm never going to get over grief. And that idea is wrong. There's actually a second kind of philosophy on grief, which is that grief is perpetual. The way I like to describe it is, if you utilize the 5 stages of grief, I like to think of it as a separate book. Your life is one book, and let's say at age 24, you experience the loss of your mother. That's chapter 24 of your book. Now, when you grieve, you basically are saying you're writing a separate book and you have to eventually close that one before you can get to chapter 25. It becomes very confusing because you're essentially trying to separate that time of life and those feelings that you're experiencing from the rest of your life, as if one day you're going to wake up and everything's okay because you've come to some conclusion. I don't think that happens. I think that your story is perpetual, that it keeps going regardless of what has happened, and that you're supposed to find a way to mold and intertwine your grief into your current life. Not eradicate it, not get rid of it, or pretend that it didn't exist. I actually think healthy grieving is allowing yourself to experience that grief, learning from that grief, allowing the memories of that person to live on, but changing the way in which they do. In the beginning of the grief, you'll often find that the thoughts are mostly negative, that you miss them, that it's not the same. You'll look at a chair where they used to sit. But you'll find that chair or those associations you have with that person, that certain song, if you go through those emotions, will often become more fond. They will actually become not necessarily happy, but neutral. And I think neutral is still good because it's a part of your story and you can't erase it. You know, say scars with enough time heal, but they're still there and they're supposed to be. They're reminders, and reminders can be very useful. So if you're going through grief, or if you thought that, you're not doing it right, remember that what you're experiencing is perpetual. It's a part of an entire story that is your life. It is not something that you have to close and wake up on one Saturday morning and feeling good again. It's not how it works, in my opinion, for the most part. If you're somebody who has gone through the 5 stages of grief and that has worked for you, that's great. I'm not saying that amongst the 8 billion people that it can't work, but I am saying that there is a large percentage of people that I have seen that beat themselves up and feel guilty for not grieving the right way. Grief is a part of life. There are different seasons and different forms, and grief is natural. It is okay. It's okay to be sad. That's a human response to losing something, and it's okay to not be okay. So guys, if you have grieved before, if that resonates with you, if this message resonates with you, leave some comments below. Let me know what you think about the 5 stages of grief. I'm not dissing the 5 stages. I just think that there are other options out there instead of having to follow a certain specific program to get over something difficult that has happened to you. As always, please subscribe, and I look forward to bringing you more mental health content.